I titled today's mind map, Ideal Thoughts That Create Our Reality. So today I had the opportunity to go through one of my favorite books, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. As I've been working with this information for many years now, since 2004, having discovered it through Think and Grow Rich, and at the time being in $50,000 debt and applying the information, and not only getting out of debt, but also buying my first house, using the information to rise up in corporate, receive a number of different promotions, and then in 2009 decide that I was going to leave. 10 years I worked there to start my own IT business, in which, again, working with this information allowed me to grow it from 2009 to 13. And although it was successful, I reached an interesting point where one of the business partners, who actually ended up taking on a number of my clients when I transitioned, and they had a larger IT business. We were talking about the different experiences that they were having, and I realized for me, what I found to be the most joyous aspect of doing that business was communication in regards to helping the businesses with their sales, their marketing, their leadership, their ways of thinking, mindset. I found that I lit up the most during the sales presentations with the clients when we would talk about those areas more so than the IT services. And I found that this listening to what I intuitively desire and my inner voice also showed up in the later stages of my corporate career, as there was talks with management in regards to stepping more into a leadership role. I could go in the direction of the leadership roles and moving up in the corporate environment, which I felt for me would have been a great path also. And what I was intuitively even more excited to do was to take what I had learned from the 10 years of experience and then build the IT business around that, in which then I transitioned into consulting and also started this YouTube channel. So what I found is, for me, the best way to work with this information is to go about my day-to-day life, my business life, my personal life, and see where this information that I've been working with can be integrated to a deeper degree. Also, revisiting the information. I like to read the same books again and again because we recognize that as we go through the same information, we understand it even more so as we experience the changes within ourselves. So today I revisited this book, and I've got some insights from today's reflections and infuse in our conversation. And I also want to tie this into another one of my favorite books, a very short book. I've done a discussion on it. A few discussions, actually. The 7-Day Mental Diet by Emmett Fox. So our premise, as he says, mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. So imagine mind being blank. And so what we're looking to do with this conversation is to fill our mind up with the thoughts that are ideal and distinct with how we imagine ourselves to be, ideally, in relation to different areas of our life, and to live and operate from that premise. So then we are consciously working with the two gifts of speech and mind, as in we're consciously deciding what to identify with. The beautiful thing about going through this information and applying it every day is it becomes a habit. It becomes a way of life. You'll find that it's easier to think of thoughts that are ideal, in harmony with how you truly want to live, in relation with your goals, your vision, relating with each other, and so forth. And it'll be easier to maintain it. So as he says, we sooner or later discover that we are the master gardener of our soul and the director of our life. He says he also reveals within himself the laws of thought and understanding with ever-increasing accuracy how the thought forces and mind elements operate in the shaping of his character, circumstances, and destiny. So I find that when we commit to a vision, whatever we desire to experience in our life, we want to operate from the premise that it already exists now. This is the commonality that we find in all this information. As he says here, cherish your visions, cherish your ideals, cherish the music that steers in your heart, the beauty that forms in your mind, the loveliness that drapes your purest thoughts, for out of them will grow all delightful conditions, all heavenly environment. Of these, if you but remain true to them, your world will at last be built. To desire is to obtain. To aspire is to achieve. The greatest achievement was, at first and for a time, a dream. The oak sleeps in the acorn. The bird waits in the egg. And in the highest vision of the soul, a waking angel steers. Dreams are the seedlings of reality. So what we find is when we commit to a vision, related thoughts that are in harmony and in contribution to the vision show up. This is experienced on our day-to-day activities in relation to our goals and our vision, our day-to-day life, and this forms, as we have been discussing, the self-image. And in relation to the self-image is how we relate with each other, environment, circumstance, and information. And so this represents the character, as he says, thought and character are one. And as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. And we can relate this over to Tuesday's video in which we spoke about personal magnetism, which is in relationship with others, representing your ideal, authentic self-image as others play out the theater, behavioral patterns that reflect that state in a mutually beneficial way. And so he says, every thought seed sown or allowed to fall in the mind and to take root there produces its own, blossoming sooner or later into act and bearing its own fruitage of opportunity and circumstance. So here's an important distinction. Let's zone in here. Every thought seed sown or allowed to fall into the mind and take root there. So what this is implying is that we have thousands and thousands of thoughts each day. And what we want to identify with are the thoughts that are in harmony and in contribution to our goals, our visions, our definite chief aims, how we desire to live, how we authentically see ourselves from the perspective of the ideal self-image. And I've mentioned this many times, it's important to incorporate meditation and also maintaining flow in your day-to-day experience, as meditation helps you identify if you are identifying with thought processes, emotional patterns, behavioral patterns that are not true and authentic with how you see yourself to be in your vision, which perhaps at that moment represents identifying with a state of mind that is not in alignment with your vision, and to experience more of the autotelic flow on the day-to-day journey, we want to identify with the state of mind, which is congruent to the self-image, which is one with the vision. And as we further develop this awareness through perhaps meditation, we will notice that it is easier to be present to each moment and recognize the state of mind that we're in. And this is not done from the perspective of overthinking, rather thinking feelingly. You feel it. Also be aware of the thoughts. Ideas, hunches, inspiration, intuitive inner conversations show up when we're in that state of mind. That's one with that vision, and thus I would like to further encourage it throughout this video, as I've been encouraging it all throughout the videos, to contributing in your goals, visions, definite chief aims. And so this is also echoed in the 7-Day Mental Diet by Emmett Fox. As mentioned, I've done a few discussions on the book. I'll put a link in the description to those discussions. And so today, let's relate over to what we have been discussing in regards to this information here from James Allen's As a Man Thinketh. So really the process, the 7-Day Mental Diet, and I look at this as a way of life. So one can see it as a 7-day mental diet in which they intentionally put themselves through the process in which they're aware to a higher degree of their thoughts, and they're releasing, letting be thoughts. So again, nuanced identification with the thoughts, as he says here. Every thought seed sown or allowed to fall in the mind and to take root there. There's the nuance. We have the degree of awareness to let the thoughts pass. And if we'd like to identify with them in contribution to our goals and our visions, such as ideas for our innovation, artistic expression, invention, then we can. And the benefit of doing this, as Steve Jobs had articulated in his commencement speech, is we don't allow opinions. We're the ones allowing within to identify with thoughts that are not true and accurate to how we ideally see ourselves to be in contribution and harmony with our vision, to drown out our own inner voice, which is the inner dialogue, inner conversation of harmony, which is another reason why I mention making flow a priority. We will find as we are experiencing flow and deep stages of flow, autotelic, that this is automatic. And as a result, we'll automatically think and identify with thoughts and ideas in harmony and in contribution with our vision, automatically, without overthinking. So he says, make up your mind to devote 1 week solely to the task of building a new habit of thought, which is in reference to the 7-day mental diet. And what I found is that I more so every day made this a way of life, because then the authentic self-image, the thought processes, the emotional patterns and behavioral patterns that are ideal in relation to whatever experience I'm having are allowed to flow, allowed to be. It happens automatically and effortlessly from the premise of the vision realized. And so he says, for 7 days, you must not allow yourself to dwell in relation to what James Allen said, sown or take root there. He says, dwell on any kind of thoughts of failure, disappointment, trouble, any thought of criticism, spite, jealousy, condemnation of others, or self-condemnation. And again, why we're doing this, so we can remain in the state of mind, the self-image that is authentic, and to further encourage the inner voice and intuition, which as an entrepreneur, an inventor, an artist, an innovator, you receive distinct, unique ideas, insights, perspectives that perhaps others are not aware of as you allow yourself to express from the premise of those thoughts through your vision, which is a form of, as he says here, cherish your visions, cherish your ideals, cherish the music that steers in your heart, the beauty that forms in your mind, the beauty that forms in your mind, the loveliness that drapes your purest thoughts, for out of them will grow all delightful conditions, all heavenly environment. Of these, if you but remain true to them, which is what we're doing here, your world will at last be built. And so some questions that a person can ask themselves to release in regards to thoughts that are not true and accurate to how they are in relation to their vision is they could ask themselves, is it possible for anybody to release from this thought? Then they can say, is it possible for me to release from this thought? In which then they will discover that it is. And then they could say, I am that possibility now. And when I do this, I notice that I have released that thought of failure, disappointment, criticism, condemnation. And so to emphasize, he even says, you must be quite clear that what this calls for is that you shall not entertain or dwell on these things. Not entertain or dwell on these things. Note this carefully. It is not the thoughts that come to you that matter, but only such of them as you choose to entertain and dwell upon, as James Allen says here. Thought and character are one, and as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment, which is what we're looking to bring forth, is our vision into existence, releasing from the overthinking and the mental chatter that seems to drown out our intuition and inner voice, which shall guide you and compel you to realizing your goals and your visions, as I have discovered this. As looking back through my experiences, when I started working with this information through Think and Grow Rich, this has been the case all throughout. And as a result of working with this, I find that my mind is clear. I can reveal to and automatically listen to the inner voice, which guides me on the journey to realizing the vision. And so if an undesirable thought floats into your mind, but can recognize that we are not the thoughts, and perhaps we could identify with that thought, and just as we could, if we consciously chose to, identify with that thought, there is a possibility to identify with another thought. You can ask yourself, what is true and accurate to my vision, how I really see myself to be in my ideal, and identify with those thoughts. Again, another reason why I suggest making flow a priority, because when you are engaged in an activity or project, whatever it is for you, that brings you into flow, that you'll find that you automatically release from thoughts of failure, disappointment, trouble, criticism, condemnation of self and others. And you'll feel very lighthearted and engaged with what you're doing. And you'll notice as you maintain this, and as we've been discussing, as we maintain this, this becomes the self-image, the character, as he says here. Thought and character are one. And as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. And as we remain in that inner state, that is ideal, and you know what that means for you, you'll notice that things change. You'll notice that if you're performing an activity, you'll notice that it'll flow. You'll perform it even more effortlessly. If you're an athlete, you'll experience what we refer to as being in the zone. And you'll notice this in your artistic expressions, in your communication, in how you relate with others, and how you relate with this world in general. You'll experience a deep one-with connection, five-sensory integration with the six senses I refer to sometimes, physical, mental, emotional. Deep stage of flow, autotelic. And so we're treating the mind like the garden. As he says, mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. And what we're looking to do as a result of working with this information is bring forth our goals, our visions, our definite chief aims into existence. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an autosuggestion to further encourage. You can say, I recognize my mind likened to a garden, intelligently cultivated from the thoughts that are in harmony and in contribution to my vision, in relationship with others, in harmonious relationship with environment, as I find myself automatically identifying with thoughts, ideas, and perspectives from the premise of my vision realize. I recognize then through the feeling, thought and character are one. As I cherish my visions, my ideals, and the music that steers in my heart, which reveals intuitive thoughts of beauty that form my mind, for creative expression in invention, innovation, and artistic expression, in all areas of my life, representing the delightful conditions, heavenly environment, from the premise of my dream, the seedling of reality. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.